The darkness of space suddenly exploded with light as hundreds of alien warships appeared at the very edge of our solar system. These weren't like anything humans had ever seen before. The Vulcan ships looked like giant black triangles with sharp edges that seemed to cut through space itself. Their dark metal hulls absorbed the light from distant stars, making them look like moving shadows against the cosmic backdrop. Fleet Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed even Earth's largest space stations. His four arms moved across the control panels as he studied the glowing tactical displays. 300 warships. 300 of the most advanced fighting machines the Vulcan Empire had ever built. All aimed at one small blue planet that orbited a yellow star. The commander's insect-like eyes glowed with satisfaction. According to their scouts, Earth was nothing special. Just another primitive world filled with creatures who had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. Their intelligence reports showed a few basic satellites and some crude space stations, nothing that could stand against the might of a full Vulcan war fleet. "Look at this pathetic system," Thexval clicked to his second-in-command. "One small world, a few tiny moons and some scattered rocks they call planets. We'll be done before their sun sets. But millions of miles away, on the moon that Earth's inhabitants called Luna, something was already happening. Deep inside Luna Station, warning lights began flashing red across dozens of screens. The station's massive sensor arrays, hidden beneath the moon's surface, had been watching the edge of the solar system for hours. "Admiral Park," came an urgent voice through the communication system. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Seo Jin-woo, a young officer who had been monitoring the deep space sensors for his entire shift. His hands shook slightly as he read the numbers on his screen. Long-range sensors confirm massive hostile fleet approaching from Sector 7. "Sir, there are hundreds of them." Admiral Park Min-ho had been enjoying a quiet moment in his office, sipping coffee from his favorite mug while reviewing routine patrol reports. He was a man in his 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many years of service. But when he heard those words, everything changed. He set down his coffee so quickly that some spilled onto his desk, but he didn't notice. Park walked quickly to the command center, his footsteps echoing in the corridors of Luna Station. Years of that preparation had led to this moment. Every training exercise, every simulation, every late-night planning session had been for this day. The day when Earth would face its first real alien invasion. The command center buzzed with activity. Officers sat at dozens of control stations, their fingers flying over keyboards as data streamed across their screens. The main display showed a three-dimensional map of the entire solar system, with hundreds of red dots moving slowly toward Earth. "Signal all stations," Admiral Park said, his voice steady and calm. "Initiate Protocol 7. Those three words sent a message across Earth's entire orbital network, on space stations hidden behind asteroids, on military platforms disguised as research facilities, on ships drifting silently in the darkness between planets. Humans received the same message. The time had come. Captain Kim Da-un was checking supply reports on defense platform Aegis 12 when the message came through. Aegis 12 looked like any other civilian space station from the outside. It had solar panels, communication arrays, and docking bays for supply ships. But hidden beneath its innocent appearance were weapons that could crack a moon in half. Kim was a veteran officer who had served in space for over 20 years. She had trained for this scenario countless times, running simulations and drills, until every crew member could perform their duties blindfolded. But she had always hoped this day would never come. "All hands to battle stations," she announced over the station's communication system. Her voice carried to every corner of the platform, reaching engineers in the reactor rooms, gunners at the weapon controls, and pilots in the fighter bays. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The Vulcan ships continued their steady advance through space, moving in perfect formation like a school of deadly fish. Commander Thexval watched the blue planet grow larger on his screens, completely confident in his overwhelming numbers and superior technology. His intelligence reports had been very clear. Earth had some basic defensive satellites and a few primitive space stations. Nothing that could threaten a proper war fleet. But as his ships moved deeper into the solar system, passing the orbit of the planet humans called Mars, something strange began to happen. Energy readings started appearing on his sensors. Faint, at first, then growing stronger. His science officers reported unusual electromagnetic signatures coming from various points throughout the system. Probably just their primitive communication networks, one officer suggested. Or maybe some kind of industrial equipment. Thexville nodded, dismissing the readings as unimportant. How wrong he was about to be, deep beneath the streets of New York City, in a bunker that most world leaders didn't even know existed. Secretary General Lee Soo-jin stood before the largest emergency assembly in human history. The room was filled with presidents, prime ministers, military commanders, and scientists from every nation on Earth. The air was thick with tension as holographic displays showed the approaching alien fleet in real time. Lee Soo-jin was known for her calm demeanor, even in the most difficult situations. She had negotiated peace treaties, handled global crises, and managed conflicts between nations for over a decade. But this was different. This was humanity's first contact with an alien species, and it was happening under the worst possible circumstances. The room fell completely silent as she stepped up to the communication console. Her fingers moved across the controls, setting the transmission to broadcast on every frequency known to science. Radio waves, quantum signals, electromagnetic pulses, everything humanity could think of to make sure the message would reach the alien fleet. Attention, unknown vessels. Her voice carried across the void of space, traveling at the speed of light toward the approaching armada. You have entered human territory with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. This is your only warning. The words were simple, direct, and left no room for misunderstanding. There was no begging, no pleading for mercy, no desperate attempt to negotiate, just a clear statement of fact and a single chance for the invaders to turn around and leave. Millions of miles away aboard the massive Vulcan flagship, the transmission crackled through the communication systems. The bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. They had expected panic, fear, maybe desperate attempts at surrender. Instead, they heard what sounded like a military commander giving orders to an equal opponent. Fleet Commander Thexville's mandibles clicked together in what humans might recognize as laughter. His insect-like features twisted into an expression of amusement as he turned to his officers. "Did these primitives just threaten us?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. The bridge crew erupted in laughter. The sound echoed through the ship's corridors as news of the human transmission spread. Warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, scientists who had developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets, and officers who had served in campaigns across the galaxy. All of them found the idea of being threatened by Earth's inhabitants absolutely hilarious. "Should we respond, Commander?" asked his communications officer, still chuckling at the absurdity of the situation. "Why waste our time?" Thexville replied, waving one of his forearms dismissively. "Let them have their moment of bravery. It will make their defeat even sweeter." Back on Earth, in the heavily fortified command center known as Earth Defense Command, Colonel Choi Jae-min watched his screens with growing concern. Banks of computers analyzed every signal coming from the alien fleet, looking for any sign that they had received and understood the warning message. "Ma'am," he reported to Secretary General Lee through the secure communication link, "they're not responding to our warning. Fleet continues on approach vector. If anything, they seem to be accelerating." The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. Every person in both command centers knew what this meant. The aliens had made their choice. They had been offered peace, offered a chance to avoid what was coming, and they had rejected it. "Understood, Colonel," Secretary General Lee replied, her voice as steady as if she were discussing the weather. "Begin charging the grid." Those 4 words triggered the most massive military mobilization in human history. Throughout the solar system, concealed weapons platforms that had been sleeping for decades suddenly came to life. What the Vulcans had dismissed as simple mining, stations began drawing enormous amounts of power from hidden fusion reactors buried deep in their cores. A communication relay near Saturn suddenly revealed massive energy conduits running through its structure. A research station orbiting Mars started channeling power through systems that no peaceful research facility would ever need. An asteroid mining operation in the belt between Mars and Jupiter began extending weapon arrays that had been hidden beneath fake rock surfaces. For over 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this day. Every space station, every satellite, every seemingly innocent piece of orbital infrastructure had been designed with dual purposes. On the surface, they served peaceful civilian needs: communication, research, mining, transportation. But hidden, beneath their innocent exteriors, were weapons systems that represented the very best of human engineering and determination. Dr. Han So-young floated in the observation deck of research station Galileo, which orbited the giant planet Jupiter. From her position, she had one of the best views of the approaching alien fleet. Her instruments could detect things that even the most advanced military sensors might miss. Gravitational sensors show they're still accelerating toward Earth, she reported to the Defense Network. Her voice carried a note of amazement at the aliens' overconfidence. They have no idea what's waiting for them. Throughout the solar system, the trap that humanity had spent generations building was finally ready to spring. Hidden weapons emerged from camouflaged positions. Defensive screens powered up for the first time since their installation. Fighter squadrons that officially didn't exist began launching from secret bases. The Vulcan fleet continued its steady approach, completely unaware that they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey, flying directly into the most sophisticated ambush in galactic history. And they were about to learn that humans were very, very good at setting traps. The moment the Vulcan fleet entered the asteroid belt, everything changed in an instant. What had seemed like empty space, filled with floating rocks and harmless human equipment, suddenly transformed into something that would give nightmares to military strategists across the galaxy. The first sign of trouble came when a seemingly innocent mining station near a large asteroid began to unfold like a deadly flower. Panels that had looked like solar collectors split apart to reveal massive weapon barrels underneath. Communication arrays rotated on hidden joints, pointing directly at the approaching alien ships. What the Vulcans had thought were simple fuel depots suddenly sprouted missile launchers that had been cleverly disguised as storage tanks. Lieutenant Kexmol, the Vulcan sensor operator, had been relaxing at his station just moments before. His multiple eyes had been scanning the usual readouts, looking for the basic defensive satellites his commanders expected to find. But now his screens exploded with warnings as hundreds of new contacts appeared out of nowhere. Contact, multiple bogies appearing on all vectors. His voice cracked with panic as he tried to make sense of what his instruments were telling him. "Sir, I'm reading weapons signatures everywhere. They were hiding in plain sight." The panic in his voice spread across the Vulcan communications network like wildfire. Ship captains who had been confident in their overwhelming superiority suddenly found themselves staring at tactical displays that showed they were completely surrounded. From Defense Platform Aegis 12, Captain Kim Da-yoon watched the alien fleet enter her trap with grim satisfaction. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, running countless simulations and training exercises. Now it was time to put all that preparation to use. All platforms, weapons free. Her voice echoed across the defense network, reaching every hidden weapon station, every concealed fighter base, every camouflaged orbital fortress throughout the outer solar system. Engage at will. Those 3 words unleashed hell. The first wave of attacks came from the kinetic interceptors, weapons that the Vulcans never saw coming because they traveled at nearly the speed of light. These weren't energy beams or explosive missiles. They were simple chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic launchers hidden throughout the asteroid belt. To the alien invaders, it looked like their ships were simply exploding for no reason. One moment, a Vulcan destroyer would be cruising through space, its shields at full power and its weapons ready. The next moment, it would be torn apart as a piece of tungsten the size of a coffee cup punched through its hull at a significant fraction of light speed. Particle beam arrays that had spent decades masquerading as solar collectors swiveled on. Hidden mounts, their true purpose finally revealed. These weapons fired streams of accelerated particles that could slice through the strongest armor like a hot knife through butter. The Vulcans' advanced energy shields, which had protected them in countless battles across the galaxy, meant absolutely nothing against weapons that struck at near light speed. Commander Thexval stood frozen on his bridge, watching in horror, as his outer formations simply vanished from his tactical displays. Ships that had taken years to build and contained thousands of his finest warriors were being destroyed so quickly that his sensors could barely keep track of the carnage. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his terrified crew. "Our intelligence said they were primitive. They're supposed to have basic satellites and communication relays. Where did all these weapons come from?" His science officer, trembling with fear, tried to make sense of the sensor readings. "Sir, it appears they built dual-purpose infrastructure. Everything we identified as civilian equipment had hidden military components. Their entire outer system is one massive weapons platform." Meanwhile, Major Yun Tai-ho was directing one of the most complex military operations in human history from his command ship, hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons. His specialty was drone warfare, and he had been waiting years for a chance to test his theories against a real enemy. "Launch all squadrons," he ordered calmly. "Target their command vessels first. Cut off their coordination, and they'll fall." Apart. Across the outer solar system, hangar bays that had been disguised as storage facilities suddenly opened. Thousands of autonomous fighter drones poured out like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. These weren't piloted by humans. They were controlled by advanced artificial intelligence that could react faster than any biological creature. The drone swarms moved in perfect coordination, their programming allowing them to share information and adapt their tactics in real time. They focused their attacks on the largest Vulcan ships, the command vessels that were trying to coordinate the invasion fleet's response to the ambush. The carefully orchestrated ambush unfolded exactly as humanity had planned for decades. Every move had been calculated. Every weapon placement had been tested in simulations. Every possible alien response had been anticipated and countered. The Vulcans had flown directly into a kill zone that extended throughout the entire outer solar system. What made the trap even more devastating was that the aliens had no idea how extensive it really was. They could see the weapons firing at them from the asteroid belt, but they couldn't detect the additional layers of defense that were still hidden throughout the solar system, waiting to spring into action if any of the invaders managed to escape. The initial ambush. Back on Lunar Station, Admiral Park Min-ho observed the battle through real-time feeds from thousands of sensors and cameras positioned throughout the combat zone. His expression was calm but determined as he watched the alien fleet being methodically destroyed. "They gave us no choice," he said quietly to his staff, his words carrying the weight of humanity's collective decision. "We offered them peace. We gave them a fair warning. They chose war instead." He paused, watching another group of alien ships disappear from the tactical display. Humanity protects its own. The void of space filled with desperate alien voices as the Vulcan fleet fell apart around them. Radio communications that had once carried confident battle orders now screamed with panic and confusion. Ship captains begged for reinforcements that would never come. Engineers reported massive hull breaches and failing life support systems. Medical officers called for evacuation ships that were already destroyed. Commander Thexval stood in the middle of his bridge, surrounded by sparking control panels and flickering displays. Half of his crew lay unconscious or worse from the latest human attack. The proud flagship that had led hundreds of successful conquests across the galaxy was now a burning wreck, held together by emergency force fields and desperate prayers. For the first time in his long military career, Thexval finally understood the magnitude of their error. These weren't primitive creatures defending their simple world with basic technology. This was a trap that had been decades in the making, designed by minds that understood warfare on a level his species had never imagined. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, his voice shaking as he read the sensor displays. "We're detecting massive energy buildups near their homeworld. These readings are off the charts." Thexval's compound eyes focused on the data streaming across his remaining screens. What he saw made his blood run cold. The energy signatures coming from Earth's orbital space weren't defensive weapons preparing to protect the planet. They were offensive systems charging up for a counterattack that would reach far beyond this solar system. "These aren't defensive weapons. the tactical officer continued, his mandibles clicking with terror. "Sir, they're preparing to strike back, against us, against our homeworld." The realization hit Thexville like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been defending themselves. They had been gathering intelligence, studying his fleet, learning everything they could about Vulcan technology and the location of Vulcan space. While his ships were being destroyed, the humans had been preparing to take the war directly to his people's doorstep. Suddenly, space itself seemed to ripple behind the remnants of his rear guard. A massive human vessel materialized out of nowhere, its sleek hull reflecting the light of distant stars. The ship had been there all along, watching, waiting, completely invisible to Vulcan's sensors, until it chose to reveal itself. Captain Lee Hyun-woo's voice cut through the static-filled alien communications with crystal clarity. His tone was calm, almost conversational, which somehow made his words even more terrifying. "This is what happens when you threaten Earth," he said, as if he were explaining something obvious to a child. "We've been watching species like yours for generations. We know how you think, how you fight, and how you die." The human stealth cruiser moved with fluid grace, positioning itself to cut off any escape route the surviving Vulcan ships might attempt to use. Its weapons remained powered down, a clear message that it didn't consider the remaining aliens enough of a threat to bother shooting. While the battle raged in space, deep beneath Earth's surface, teams of human intelligence, analysts were working at speeds that would have impressed any military strategist in the galaxy. The intercepted Vulcan databases had revealed everything: their homeworld's exact location, detailed maps of their military installations, population centers, industrial complexes, and even the orbital patterns of their defensive satellites. Humanity had been preparing for this conversation long before the first Vulcan ship had entered their space. Every probe that had visited the solar system over the past 50 years had been carefully studied. Every piece of alien technology that had been detected was analyzed and reverse-engineered. Every radio signal that had leaked from Vulcan space had been intercepted and decoded. Dr. Park Ji-hai worked from a monitoring station so far from Earth that the sun looked like just another star in the sky. Her facility orbited in the cold darkness beyond Pluto, where massive sensor arrays could detect the faintest signals from across the galaxy. She had spent her entire career studying alien civilizations, learning their languages, mapping their territories, and understanding their weaknesses. "Sir," her voice carried across secure channels to the military command centers throughout the solar system, "we have targeting solutions for all major Vulcan worlds. Relativistic projectiles are spun up and ready for launch. We can reach their homeworld in 18 months. The implications of her words were staggering. Humanity had built weapons capable of striking targets across interstellar distances. Projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed could cross the void between star systems and arrive with the force of nuclear weapons. The Vulcans had brought a war fleet to conquer one world, only to discover that their intended victims could destroy their entire civilization in response. Secretary General Lee Soo-jin's final transmission reached the dying Vulcan fleet with the weight of absolute authority behind every word. She spoke not as someone begging for mercy, but as a judge pronouncing sentence on criminals who had been caught in the act. "Your invasion ends here," she said, her voice carrying across the void to reach every surviving alien ship. "Any retaliation against Earth will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. We know where you live. We know where your families live. We know the location of every world you call home. Choose wisely." The message was clear and undeniable. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were offering the Vulcans one final chance to prevent their own extinction. The choice was simple: accept defeat and live, or continue fighting and watch their entire species disappear from the galaxy. Lieutenant Colonel Nam Woo-jin commanded one of the human patrol groups that had been positioned at the outer edges of the solar system. His job was to make sure that none of the invading ships escaped, to bring word of human capabilities back to their commanders. But as he watched the remaining Vulcan vessels attempt to flee, he realized they had nowhere to go. Every escape route had been anticipated and blocked. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system, appearing wherever the aliens tried to run. The Vulcans found themselves trapped in a maze with no exit, surrounded by enemies who had been planning this moment for longer than most of their crew had been alive. The hunters had become the hunted. The predators had discovered they were actually the prey. And now they had to live with the consequences of their terrible mistake. The silence that followed the battle was more terrifying than the sounds of war had been. Where once 300 proud Vulcan warships had cruised through space in perfect formation, now only twisted metal and floating debris marked their passage. Emergency beacons flickered weakly among the wreckage, their distress signals creating a haunting electronic symphony in the void. One ship remained intact, though barely. The Vulcan scout vessel, Night's Edge, drifted away from the carnage, its hull scarred by weapons fire and its engines sputtering with each attempt to maintain power. Inside, the few surviving crew members worked desperately to keep their ship functional long enough to escape the human solar system. Commander Thexeval lay strapped to a medical bed in the ship's tiny infirmary, his body broken, but his mind still sharp enough to understand what had happened. 2 of his forearms were gone, lost when his flagship's bridge had exploded around him. His compound eyes could barely focus, but he forced himself to stay conscious long enough to send one final message home. With trembling claws, he activated the ship's long-range communication system. The message would take months to reach Vulcan space, traveling across the vast distances between star systems at the speed of light. But it was the most important message he would ever send. This is Commander Thexeval of the 47th Fleet to Vulcan High Command. He wheezed into the communicator, each word causing him visible pain. Do not engage the humans. Repeat, do not engage. They are not what they appear to be. He paused, gathering strength for what might be his final words. We walked into a trap, 50 years in the making. Every piece of civilian infrastructure in their system was a hidden weapon. Every mining station was a fortress. Every communication relay was a gun platform. They let us come close enough to study us, learn our weaknesses, and then they destroyed us without breaking a sweat. His voice grew weaker but more urgent. They know where our homeworld is. They know where all our colonies are. They have weapons that can reach us across interstellar space. If you send another fleet, they will destroy our entire civilization. This is not a request. This is the final order of a dead commander to a dead fleet. The transmission ended, and Thexeval's eyes closed for the last time. But his message continued its journey through space, carrying news that would change everything. Several million miles away, Captain Song Minji watched the retreating Vulcan ship through the sensors of her patrol vessel. Her orders were clear. No alien ship was to leave the solar system alive. Her weapons were charged and ready. One quantum torpedo would finish what the battle had started. But she held her fire. Ma'am, her weapons officer asked, should I target their engines? We can disable them without destroying the ship. Captain Song shook her head slowly. Let them go, she said, her voice carrying a wisdom that came from understanding the bigger picture. They need to tell the others what happens when you threaten our home. She watched the damaged ship disappear into the darkness between stars, carrying its cargo of broken survivors and recorded evidence of humanity's true capabilities. It would take them months to reach home if they survived the journey at all. But if they did make it, they would deliver a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The story of humanity's victory spread through galactic communication networks faster than anyone had expected. The surviving Vulcans had recorded everything: detailed sensor readings of human weapons, evidence of their vast defensive networks, tactical analyses of their military strategies, and personal testimonies from the few survivors who lived through the battle. Other alien civilizations studied the data with growing alarm. The schematics showed weapon systems that were decades ahead of anything they possessed. The defensive networks revealed a level of military preparation that bordered on paranoia. The battle recordings demonstrated tactical thinking that was both creative and ruthlessly efficient. But most disturbing of all were the psychological profiles. The humans hadn't acted like desperate defenders fighting for their lives. They had acted like experienced predators, dealing with a minor inconvenience. Their communications during the battle had been calm, professional, almost bored. They had given the Vulcans exactly one warning, and when that warning was ignored, they had responded with overwhelming and precisely calculated force. The picture that emerged was clear and terrifying. Earth was not a target of opportunity, waiting to be conquered by the first species with enough ships and weapons. It was a fortress world inhabited by apex predators who had been preparing for galactic warfare longer than most civilizations had been spacefaring. In the depths of Lunar Station, Admiral Park Min-ho addressed the Earth Defense Council one final time before the crisis protocols were officially ended. Representatives from every nation on Earth listened as he summarized what had happened and what it meant for humanity's future. "We gave them fair warning," he said, his voice carrying the weight of history. "We offered them a chance to leave, peacefully. They chose to ignore it and press their attack. Now the entire galaxy knows the truth about us." He gestured toward the holographic displays that showed the debris field where the Vulcan fleet had died. "Humanity protects its own, and the price of aggression against us is absolute. This message will spread to every corner of known space. No one will make the mistake of underestimating us again." Across the galaxy, other species quietly began removing Earth from their expansion plans. Many had been watching the small blue planet for years, considering it a future target for colonization or resource extraction. The humans had seemed so peaceful in their diplomatic encounters, so welcoming to trade and cultural exchange. They had appeared to be exactly what their first contact protocols claimed, a young, friendly species just beginning to explore the wider universe. Now they understood why Earth's inhabitants had seemed so relaxed and confident during those early meetings. The humans weren't afraid of the dangerous galaxy around them, weren't worried about the predatory civilizations that stalked weaker species among the stars. They were the most dangerous thing in it. The age of humanity's innocence was over. The galaxy now knew that Earth was protected by guardians who had spent generations preparing for this day. The message was simple and undeniable. Humanity was not prey to be hunted. They were the hunters, and they had been watching and waiting for someone to make the mistake of threatening their home. Now everyone knew, and everyone was afraid.